Russia is rich in cultural tradition. But for its citizens, times are hard. They're hopeful that perestroika will bring needed economic reform. But change is slow to come, and they still wait in long lines for food and consumer goods that are in short supply. Their government is hopeful that joint ventures with the West, made possible by perestroika, will help speed up the transition to a market-driven economy. But imagine actually trying to bring free enterprise to Russia, a country where political philosophy, inadequate technology, and cultural differences present nearly insurmountable odds. Imagine trying to open a McDonald's restaurant in Moscow. It's 1976, and George A. Cohan, senior chairman of McDonald's Canada, has opened negotiations with the Soviets for the first McDonald's in Moscow. He likes to call it hamburger diplomacy, but this diplomatic feat would take more than 12 years to accomplish.
You know, you talk about the frustration of dealing over there. I mean, you'd work for months with a group of people. You thought you were close to a deal. You thought you had it. You'd come in the next morning with one or two things to resolve, and there'd be new people at the table on the other side, and you'd say, well, where's Vladimir? We've been dealing for 3 months. And they'd say, well, I'm the person you have to complete the deal with. And you'd go back to scratch nearly. And so, you know, we hung in and we worked hard at it. We finally made it. This negotiation outlasted 3 Soviet premiers.
McDonald's partner in the deal is the Food Service Administration of the Moscow City Council, which runs all 11,000 restaurants in the city. Restaurants that range from elegant dining with china and linen to the not-so-elegant outdoor cafes. There are places to get just a cup of tea and places where everyone shares the same glass. But service is generally slow, and meeting the needs of Moscow's 9 million residents and 3 million commuters is an enormous problem for the Soviet government. The Soviets knew that their traditional food service methods were inadequate, and they were eager to learn from McDonald's experience. Nonetheless, it wasn't until April 1988 that McDonald's signed the largest joint venture ever made between a Western food service company and the Soviet Union. With the restaurant opening set for January 31st, 1990, there was only a year and 10 months to get the sophisticated McDonald's system up and running in a country where nothing like this had ever been attempted before. In 1988, businesses in Moscow were still firmly grounded in the 19th century. Mark Weiner, general director of the joint venture, was charged with getting the office up and running, a major challenge in a city where it could take up to 6 months just to get one international telephone line. Nevertheless, the restaurant had to open on time, and the other members of the international team each had crucial jobs to do. Cohan and his Moscow partners were responsible for finding the right restaurant site. Mike Geerling, vice president of purchasing for McDonald's in Germany, was brought in to find supplies of high-quality food that would meet McDonald's standards. Jeff Godden, head of operations for McDonald's Moscow, would oversee all the details of running the new restaurant, including hiring and training its Russian staff. And Dick Manthe, an American construction engineer, would supervise the building of a food production and distribution center, where local food would be turned into the McDonald's fare known around the world. All this in a country where most joint ventures have failed, but where McDonald's seems to have a fighting chance, according to Marshall Goldman of Harvard University.
McDonald's is different. They're going back into the roots of the system. But if it works and it spreads and it's not going to be just for the party elite, it's going to be for the masses, this, for Gorbachev, will be one of the first concrete steps he's had towards moving towards perestroika.
The joint venture partners selected a restaurant site then occupied by the Cafe Lyra, centrally located on Pushkin Square, and demolition began. The Lyra served 200 people a day, the new McDonald's would serve over 25,000. As construction on the restaurant began, the first challenge for Geerling was to find the beef and fresh produce the restaurant would need. Although everything was available locally, certain varieties, like the kind of potato that makes the best French fries, were not. So Hans van den Hoek, an agronomist from Holland, was brought in to help.
This is a typical Russian potato. This potato is ideal to make a good long French fry. Well, this potato, although it has an excellent taste, Russian potatoes are very, very tasty. The average Russian potato. But you cannot make French fries out of this. I mean, the French fries would have this length.
So Geerling and van den Hoek imported special seed potatoes from Holland, which would be planted in Russian soil. For the first time, McDonald's would put all of its food processing operations under one roof in a building the size of 3 football fields. The land was provided by the Russians, but because it was outside the ring road, an off-limits area for foreigners, getting non-Soviet contractors to the site required extensive negotiation.
Free travel to foreign specialists in this country.
While such complicated problems were being worked out in Russia, 4 Soviet manager trainees hired by the joint venture arrived in Canada to begin 9 months of intensive training. It was their first trip to the West, and they arrived exhausted and overwhelmed. They were shown where they would live. They were given something that's hard to come by in the Soviet Union, maps of the city. They got their first feel of hard currency. They were introduced to modern appliances like the dishwasher. And they went shopping at a Western grocery store.
You like cookies?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get some cookies then.
They were amazed at the quantity and variety of food, but the packaging was confusing.
You see all of your products wrapped in different paper packets. So what is this? I don't know what it is. Bread or biscuits or milk. It was very difficult.
But their first experience at McDonald's, behind the counter, was even more difficult. Vladimir Zurakovsky, Hamzat Hasbulatov, Mikhail Shelznov, and Georgy Smolievsky had a hard time keeping up with the North American crew and the teachers, though their enthusiasm never failed.
For McDonald's, I have never walked so fast. Only when I played soccer or tennis. It's like sport.
With only 2 weeks of training behind them, they couldn't be expected to get everything right.
Okay, that's a little too much, George. Yes. Good.
It was hard because we went through cultural shock coming to a different country. And also, before we came, we were working in Moscow offices at jobs that were not physical. Having to work 8 hours on our feet with young kids was very hard. And I remember when I got home at about 8, I was feeling dead.
Back in Russia, Hans van den Hoek was ready to begin planting the imported seed potatoes when he ran into a major problem with the chief of the collective farm.
We wanted irrigated land, and he said, yes, you will get an irrigated land. One day before planting, the leading agronomist, the chief agronomist of that sovkhoz said, irrigated land? No irrigated land for you. We said, yes, definitely. It's an agreement between the chairman and McDonald's. And he said, no. All fields under irrigation are planted already with other crops, and we have no irrigated land available. We couldn't solve the problem. It was too late in the season. We had to use that field, so we simply planted non-irrigated.
Without irrigation, they were forced to depend on the Russian summer. And suddenly, their ability to produce enough potatoes was seriously in question. In North America, the 4 Russian managers were now well into more than 1,000 hours of training at Hamburger University. training that stressed McDonald's style of employee management and the importance of friendly customer service. They even tested their new knowledge at the Sky Dome in Toronto, home of the busiest McDonald's in the world. Back home, construction on the restaurant was progressing. This McDonald's will have over 6,500 square feet of space. It will cost $4.5 million to build, and it will seat 700 people at a time. It will feature 2 complete kitchens, a service counter over 70 feet long, 27 cash registers, and a staff of 630 Russians. Only a few months remain before opening day. The question on everyone's mind is whether they will be ready to open on time. By now, Dick Manthe was making real progress on the complex. Over 300 construction workers from around the world were brought in to work on the project. When finished, it will provide jobs for 300 Russian workers, and it will be like nothing ever seen here before. But a number of other problems continued to crop up on the construction of the store.
I can't even imagine how much it's going to cost.
Putting a new restaurant where one used to be was more difficult than the Russians had ever imagined.
Well, the problem is really unique. You know, there'd been a restaurant there for years and years, and we said, well, we're putting in a different restaurant. We need more energy. And they said, well, no, just plug in your equipment. We said, we need 4 times the power. And we ended up having to trench through downtown Moscow for about 1 kilometer and build substations along the way. And so it'd be problems like that with power, with water, but eventually they all got resolved. But it was a lot of scrapping for a while.
In North America, graduation was near for the 4 Russian managers, and training had begun for 26 newly arrived assistant managers. Their exposure to the West would change their lives forever.
I don't want to sound too fancy, but you know, what this joint venture is also doing is, in a way, very supportive of perestroika. It's changing people's lives over the course of months. They've learned a new language. They've learned about that big world out there. They've learned about other cultures. I think their value systems have changed. I think this is one of the greatest exercises in manpower development that I've ever seen.
At Hamburger University in Oak Brook, Illinois, the 4 manager trainees received their degrees in hamburgerology. They all made the dean's honor list, but Kamzat was top in his class and was later named head manager of the McDonald's in Pushkin Square. At a press conference just before their return home, they expressed their eagerness to meet the toughest challenge of all, taking what they had learned and making it work in the Soviet Union.
Good time, great taste at McDonald's.
As the newly trained managers arrived back in Moscow, it was time to begin hiring their Russian crew. McDonald's placed a one-time ad in a Moscow newspaper that read, "Wanted, workers for the new McDonald's restaurant, Pushkin Square." 630 jobs were available. Day after day, applications flooded in. In all, McDonald's received over 27,000 applications. The potatoes had grown well over the summer despite the lack of irrigation, and harvesting had begun. Yields had been increased by almost 100%. It appeared that the farms would produce enough potatoes to meet the demand for McDonald's fries. The joint venture finally seemed to be working well, and each partner was learning from the other. By now, the restaurant was very near completion. The last member of the new crew had been hired. Teaching a new crew of 630 was the next major task. For them, learning to work in a Western restaurant was full of surprises.
We showed them that working for a Western company is not always necessarily glitter and glitz. They stress the importance of working together as a team, keeping our floors clean, our windows clean, preparing our food correctly, and serving our customers quickly and courteously and with a smile. But one of the most important points they learn during their training is that work can be fun, especially when we work together as a team.
The new crew members practiced for opening day, taking orders and filling them correctly. Speed was essential. They were timed to make sure they could fill each order in 60 seconds or less. But their most important lesson was learning to be courteous and to serve customers with a smile, something that's unique in Moscow.
Bye-bye, have a nice day.
Thank you, please come again. Right, great job.
The complex was now finished and taking deliveries. The production lines were in operation. Even the French fries measured up to McDonald's standards. Every hour at full capacity, the plant can produce 10,000 beef patties, 14,000 buns, thousands of pounds of French fries, and 5,000 apple pies. Everything needed for a complete McDonald's menu is being made here and sent to the new restaurant. As final preparations are being made, the huge influence of the joint venture is being felt throughout the Soviet system. It's brought new technology and a fresh way of doing business. It's had an enormous impact on Soviet agriculture, and it has provided a small but very real taste of capitalism. The dream is about to be realized. Tomorrow is opening day. January 31st, 1990. The first McDonald's in Moscow glows in the pre-dawn darkness of Pushkin Square. Curious citizens peek in the windows and study the lighted menu. Lines slowly begin to form in anticipation of the opening. Inside, crew members mop the floors, wash windows, and finish getting into uniform. People came from all over the Soviet Union, each for a special reason.
Ну, знаете, я вообще-то давно стою. Я вообще приехала только сегодня ночью.
Желание побывать за границей, не выезжая из Москвы.
Most have no idea what to expect, so crew members hand out pamphlets that explain the food and how to order it. And unlike many stores in the Soviet Union, this one takes only rubles, so everyone can buy food here.
Идея. Это же прекрасно. У нас такого еще не было в стране.
Inside, last-minute preparations are being made. The crew is excited and ready to begin. News teams from around the world are here to record the extraordinary event. As the opening draws closer, the crowds outside build until there are almost 5,000 people waiting for their first taste of the West. "14 years in the making and the work of hundreds of people, the moment has finally come." Children from a local orphanage lead the way. And then crowds of Soviet citizens pour in. The crew members greet customers with smiles and patience, and the customers smile in return. The new McDonald's in Moscow was headline news throughout the world.
Muscovites queued for hours today to taste the delights of fast food when McDonald's opened their first restaurant in the Soviet Union.
Son
los arcos dorados de McDonald's, la popular cadena de...
Rumbling Russian tummies are being well and truly filled. American fast.
In all, 30,000 people will taste McDonald's food today, a new world record. And the restaurant, which should close at 10 p.m., will stay open until midnight, so no one will be disappointed. Opening day is an unquestioned success and a promise of even better things to come.
This is the Moscow of today. A blossoming market economy has brought sweeping change to the face of the city, where goods and services from all over the world are now readily available. And in Moscow today, change is the operative word. As McDonald's enters the second half of the decade, change means expansion, innovation, and growth beyond city borders. The Moscow McDonald's of old is now truly becoming the McDonald's Russia of the 21st century. And McDonald's Russia is committed to bringing the great taste of McDonald's to new communities all across the Commonwealth of Independent States. It's been a busy 5 years for the Moscow McDonald's team, expanding the vision of the joint venture throughout Moscow. On June 1st, 1993, the McDonald's building opened on Olgarova Street. Just minutes from the Kremlin, this 12-story, $16 million office building is one of the most modern in Moscow. Its main floor features the second Moscow McDonald's restaurant, which opened to worldwide press coverage and eager customers. Top Russian leaders spent hours touring the facility, sampling McDonald's menu items they had heard so much about. 1 month later, another 10,000 anxious customers crowded historic Arbat Street to celebrate the opening of the third Moscow McDonald's restaurant. Before cutting the ribbon, George Kohan presented a check for 50 million rubles, the day's estimated receipts, to Naina Yeltsin, wife of the President of Russia, on behalf of the Moscow Institute for Pediatric Oncology. Located in two 18th century buildings, the Arbat restaurant seats over 400 customers at a time and employs more than 500 Russians. The complete restoration of the buildings took 2 years to finish and involved a huge local team of construction workers, architects, and artists. Like all Russian McDonald's, this restaurant accepts only rubles, which the company reinvests into restaurant expansion. At the end of opening day, the Arbat McDonald's had served more than 60,000 Russians, a new world record. And by the 5th anniversary of Moscow McDonald's, in January 1995, the original restaurant in Pushkin Square had served over 80 million customers. That's an average of 50,000 people a day, every day. This premier restaurant is staffed by over 800 Russian crew members and has earned the distinction of being the busiest McDonald's in the world.
When we started, we had, boy, oh boy, 80 or 90, let's call it expats, foreigners, who work for us over there. And now we're down to a handful. And what does that really show? It shows a tremendous success story on behalf of the Russian employees. When I go to the plant and I see, you know, that the meat line and the potato line and the dairy line and the bakery are all run by Russians. When I go in the restaurants and the management teams are all Russians, it shows what can happen. We put our trust in them, we put our faith in them, and they return by rising to the occasion. I think it's just wonderful to have McDonald's in Russia run by Russians. That's the way it should be.
Mutual trust is the key to McDonald's success in Moscow. Success in which its more than 2,200 employees take great personal pride. McDonald's Russia believes in fostering personal growth that pays off in company advancement for its employees. Many Russians who started off as crew persons have moved into management positions. Now, all restaurant management training is handled by Russians, marking the further independence of McDonald's Russia staff. In the summer of 1995, 2 more restaurants helped to continue the expansion of McDonald's in Russia. The Prospect Mira restaurant is near the 1980 Olympic site and shares its sports theme. Its opening marked the Russian introduction of the most famous goodwill ambassador of the McDonald's system, Ronald McDonald. Well known to children and adults all around the world, Ronald speaks more than 22 different languages. He visits schools and hospitals regularly, promoting safety, literacy, and fun wherever he goes. To celebrate the new opening, Ronald led children from a local orphanage into the new restaurant, entertaining them with his unique blend of magic and McDonaldland treats. The Sokolniki restaurant is situated beside the Moscow Fire Observation Tower, and the firefighters next door help to welcome McDonald's into their community. McDonald's is working closely with Moscow fire safety officials to develop school and family safety awareness programs. At McComplex, in response to high demand from the restaurants, McDonald's has increased its local supplier base to over 150 independent Russian companies. This means that more than 90% of all raw materials are now produced locally. At McComplex, these ingredients are processed into a finished product that meets McDonald's strictly controlled, state-of-the-art standards. As a special part of the 5th anniversary celebrations, McDonald's Russia announced the formation of the Russian chapter of Ronald McDonald Children's Charities, known as RMCC Russia. Consisting of over 100 chapters worldwide, RMCC is committed to one simple objective: helping children in need. Over the past 5 years, Moscow McDonald's has raised more than $3 million. And RMCC Russia's first permanent symbol of this commitment is McHappy Place, a flagship sports and recreation facility designed to improve the quality of life for children with special needs. Located at Krylatskoye, Moscow's Olympic Training Sports Center, McHappy Place provides recreation, physical education, and leadership training in a fun, non-medical setting. The McHappy Van, a mobile facility with portable play equipment and a recreational program for disabled children, will also find its new home at McHappy Place. It has already made thousands of visits to hospitals and orphanages throughout Moscow. McDonald's Russia is an unprecedented success because of the dedication, enthusiasm, and boundless energy of the Russian people. As more McDonald's restaurants open in Russia, the effects of the expansion are rippling through the entire Russian system. Crew members are learning a new standard in customer service. Longer-term employees are reaping the benefits of pay based on performance. Suppliers are receiving a much-needed boost and making private industry profitable. And the needy children of this country are getting the help they so urgently need. Through vision and dedication, McDonald's Russia has already served millions of Russians, and that number grows daily. The years ahead hold great plans for expansion and growth of the McDonald's system. McDonald's Russia has become a symbol for the future, helping the people of Russia to build a strong market economy for the 21st century.